Hi, my name is Tina. I'm a part-time reseller and I go by Fit for Flair. I sell on platforms like eBay and also some on Poshmark. And today I'm going to talk about my sales for the month of February. So I'm going to read the title and then tell you how long it took to sell and whether or not I would pick up that item again. So starting off today, I sold these Mephisto 9 Lilina Mary Jane low heel black nubuck suede Air Jet women's shoes. They sold for $55.99. It was on an offer that I sent out, and I paid $3.50 for these. I purchased them from the bins. They were just these sort of like low heel Mary Jane shoes, and they were super cute. I had them for 506 days, which honestly I would pick it up again. I just wish that I had priced it lower, because originally I had it priced at $70 and they kind of just sat around for a while, so I probably should have priced a little bit lower to get them to move faster. I don't think that this was a bad purchase. Mary Janes have been kind of popular for a while, so I would definitely pick them up again. Next up, I sold this Tahari vest women's small faux fur chinchilla style hood jacket winter ski resort. This sold for me for $17.49, and I paid $2.50 for it. I originally had this priced a lot higher. It was more like $24.99 at that mark. I purchased this from a regular store, and I wish that I hadn't paid that much for this. It took 497 days for it to sell. That isn't really something I would want, but I did mark it down in hopes that somebody else would want it, and I was really going for those keywords like winter, ski, and resort, thinking that would get it out of the door. So that was something that I added later on into my title, and then someone did end up purchasing it. Tahari is not a brand that I would go out of my way to purchase. It would have to have a lot of factors in order for me to pick that up, and I personally wouldn't pick this up again. Next up, I sold these J. Jill pants, women's 12, wide leg, navy blue brushed twill cotton lyocell stretch pants. These sold for me for $23.99. I did purchase these from the bins, and I paid $1.46 for these, and they took 368 days to sell. I don't think that it's a bad brand per se, but J. Jill is very much so oversaturated. With these, I thought that they would sell, mostly because they were that like wide leg style, and it was kind of giving that like office athleisure kind of thing that was sort of popular. But holding on to something for a little bit over a year isn't really the best, and I wouldn't go out of my way to purchase J. Jill unless it was like a substantial piece, like a jacket or something else like that. But ultimately, not the worst, but not the best, if I had to say anything at all. Next up, I sold this Under Armour jacket men's 3XL bench coat, cold gear long insulated hood black jacket. And this sold for me for an offer of $55.99. I only had about $2.13 into this, and it sold after 356 days. I wish that I had prices a little bit lower, but I still would pick up this Under Armour jacket. I think that it was still a good purchase, although 3XL is kind of a little bit on the high side, but for me not having a lot into it, I was pretty happy with that. Next up, I sold this Hager blazer. It was a men's 44 long city casuals worsted wool blend sport coat, USA new. And I sold this for $44.99. That was my full asking price. I originally picked this up at the bin, so I paid $1.87 for it, and it sold after 341 days. 341 days is a little bit on the higher side, but as far as blazers go, I know that they can take a while to sell, especially with the fact that a lot of people do telework and they're not always going into the office and wearing suits and things like that, or people who also have certain events and things that they might want to wear like a nice sport coat for. It does mean that it will take a little bit longer to sell, but in terms of how much I paid for this, I think it was a pretty good profit. I'm not upset about the amount that I was asking for, and because it did sell for my full price, I think I would pick that up again. And the only reason I did really is because it was new with tags. Otherwise, Hagar is not a brand that I would go out of my way to purchase. But since it also was worsted wool, I knew that that was also going to be a little bit of a draw as well. And it kind of had this like very nice sort of like textured pattern. So I was fine with that. Next up, I sold this Brioni blazer men's 44 regular Luca pure cashmere Facimo houndstooth sport coat. This sold for me for $159.20. I bought this in a regular store and I purchased it for $7.75. It took 244 days to sell. I purchased this originally because Brioni is a really great brand. It was 100% pure cashmere. I originally had this price a little bit higher, so I asked for $225 but wasn't getting any bites on them. So I eventually ended up lowering the price, and then I had a coupon, so it sold for an extra additional 20% off. So I'm not upset about the time limit that it took for it to sell. Blazers are one of those items, particularly in men's, that do have a longer sell-through rate. So I'm comfortable with that amount, and what I profited, I'm also pretty happy with. So I definitely would pick up a Brioni blazer again for a men's. If anything, I would probably just maybe mark it down a little bit sooner, but I knew that I was going to have to wait a little bit for this one, considering that like it is a more long tail item. But I'm pretty happy with that decision, so I would definitely pick that up again. Next up, I sold these Tall Bots jeans, women's 12 petite, curvy boot cut, dark wash, hemmed cotton lyocell new pants, and these were new with tags, so that's why I purchased them. But I originally had them priced at $23.99, and I bought them from the bins. I paid $1.61 for it, and they sold after 215 days. I don't have a problem with the amount that it sold for. That was my full asking price, and I was happy to sell it. So I don't know that I would pick it up again, but the only reason that I did was because it was brand new with tags. And I know that Tall Bots brand new with tags items can be on the expensive side, and typically you can ask for a little bit more money. So I don't know that I would go out of my way to purchase this again, but I know that like boot cut can also be something that sells really well at this time, since it is kind of on the trendier side. But I think it also being a petite meant that it was going to hang around a little bit longer. And from what I could tell from these, I think that it potentially could have been hemmed, so that could have also been a factor as well. Next up, I sold these Figs Pants women's medium Cade cargo scrub bottoms navy blue new stretch pockets pants, and these sold for me for $31.99. I had about $2 into them. I purchased them from the Goodwill bins, and I ended up selling them after 215 days. The only reason that I originally picked these up is because they were new, and I knew that I could ask for a little bit more money than what Figs typically goes for. Figs definitely is not where it used to be anymore. I think if you can get it for like that 50% sell-through rate area, then you're probably okay. Anything under that, I probably wouldn't go out of my way for. And even still, these still took a little while to sell for me. So, not horrible, but I wouldn't go out of my way to pick up Figs anymore. It definitely has dropped in terms of like the sell-through rate. Next up, I purchased these J. Crew pants, women's 4 corduroy bee embroidered straight orange preppy tweed pants. And these ended up selling for me for $20, and I paid $1.75 from them. I got them from the Goodwill bins, and they sold after 187 days. So I initially bought these because they did have a very distinct embroidery with the bee pattern. They also said that they were from Hong Kong, so that let me know that this was an older J. Crew item. And when I looked it up, even though a size 4 is on the smaller side, I did like the very preppy sort of like pattern that was on it and everything. So at the end of the day, I don't think this was a horrible purchase, but it usually doesn't meet my metrics. I did have it priced a little bit higher and was trying to get that like $25 mark, but it ended up selling on like an offer, so I was fine with the amount that it did sell for, even though I ultimately would have liked to have gotten it to go for that higher mark, but that's fine with me. I wouldn't go out of my way to purchase it, but I still think it was a fairly decent sale. Next up, I sold this jean jacket women's 3X floral embroidery denim velvet cotton blend button jacket. And it is a brand that I left off of the title because it really wasn't anything that I felt like anyone was going to be heavily searching for or that was going to garner a whole lot of money. So I just put jean jacket in the title, but the brand was actually like this sort of like random brand, and I mostly picked it up for the style because of the fact that it did have all this like beautiful floral embroidery, and it even had a little bit of like some lint kind of on the embroidery from like washwear, which I disclosed, and I think that that's another reason why it didn't sell for much, but it sold for $19.99. I originally had it priced a little bit higher at like that $25 mark, but I purchased this from the Goodwill bins and I paid $1.95 for it, and it sold after 166 days. I don't think that this was a horrible purchase, but it's usually not something that I would go after because I usually try to shoot for that $25 mark if it's an item that I'm purchasing at the bins, because I do want to profit on average of about $20 at least for each item. Either way, I do think that it is a okay purchase, but the sizing was another factor that I kind of had as well. And with the spring and the summer coming, I had a feeling that it would probably take a little bit to sell just because I did list it in like the fall. And once it started to get colder outside, I just didn't think that it was probably going to go for then. But you never know. Next up, I sold these Levi's jeans men's 30 by 30 557 relaxed boot cut cowboy Mexico made vintage Y2K blue pants. And these I had originally priced at like a higher amount. I wanted to get it for like that $39.99 mark, but it ended up selling for $35.99. And that was an offer that I sent out. I purchased this in a regular store and I paid $8.50 for it, and it sold after 68 days. The 557 in Levi's can be good. I'm not sure how popular they are now, but towards the time that I did list it, the 557 in Levi's did start to kind of go downward. And I was hoping that I would get it for a little bit more money, but I'm really not upset about it because it did sell in 68 days, which is a really decent amount of time. And the fact that I sold these and I bought them in a regular store, it did meet the profit margin that I typically try to shoot for if I do buy something in a regular store. So I'm fairly happy with that, and I would totally pick up a 557 again. Granted, I would probably check the sell-through rate because it was sort of heading towards a downward whenever I bought these. So next up, I sold this vintage teddy women's small lace dark romantic union maiden form chantilly black. And I purchased this at the Goodwill bins, so I didn't have a lot into it, but I received an offer from a buyer. I originally had it priced at that $24.99 mark, and they sent me an offer for $15.60, and I paid $1.06 for this. It sold after 31 days, and I accepted the offer because once I looked up the similar items that were going for that amount in this brand, it really wasn't selling for more than that like $15 mark. So I went ahead and I accepted it just because teddies aren't really all that popular right now. I know that they were sort of like around the 2010s, so that could be the reason why it did sell, is because it sort of went with this sort of like indie sleeves kind of vibe. But this sold to a buyer in Germany, so who knows, to be honest with you. And I went ahead and accepted the offer because I knew that I was going to probably sit on it based on the sell-through rate. When I originally picked it up, I really only picked it up because it was vintage and I did like all of the lace that was on it, and it went with like that dark romantic keyword that I put in there. So not horrible, but I would not pick that up just because it doesn't meet my metrics, and the sell-through rate wasn't all that great to begin with. Next up, I sold this, and it was a Faded Glory hoodie, men's medium, plaid reversible full zip grunge skater Y2K jacket, and it sold for me for my full asking price of $39.99. I bought this from the Goodwill bins for $1.67, and it sold after 37 days. I would 100% pick this up again. It did have like some substantial like staining on like the sleeve, and I also noticed that there was some staining on the inner like gray heathered like reversible side that also probably would have been better if it wasn't there and I could have asked for more money. But I was pretty happy with that. It sold fairly quickly, and even with all of the staining and everything, the style really did pull this through, because Faded Glory is not something that someone would typically go out of their way to purchase, but this was something that really wasn't purchased for the brand. It was more for the style, and I could tell this was more like a vintage Faded Glory. So I would 100% pick that up again, especially because no one else really wanted this at the bins. It was just kind of sitting there in a bin that was already picked over. I'm pretty happy with that, and I would definitely pick it up again. Next up, I sold these vintage boots women's 7 suede leather Italy slouchy flat vintage 80s burgundy boots, and these sold for me for $32. I originally had them priced a little bit higher. I marked them at $39.99, and I picked them up based on the style, so it wasn't a heavy brand or anything like that that made me want to pick these up. They were made in Italy, which was really nice, and they had this embossing on it that I thought was really great. But I picked these up from the Goodwill bins, and I paid $3.75 for them, and they sold after 25 days. So I was pretty happy with that. To be honest with you, I would pick them up again because I really was just going off of my own instinct, which told me that these were really cool. I thought that they were something that I probably would see at like Free People or maybe it was something that would sell at Urban Outfitters. So I really was just kind of going off of my own instinct with those and didn't know what I was going to get with them. But I'm definitely happy with that. 25 days is a great number to sell something that you picked up just based off of style. Next up, I sold this, and it was a Ocean Pacific shirt, men's extra large, surf, skater, beach, grunge, vintage 90s all over print shirt. And this one sold for me for $25. I originally had it priced at $29.99, but then I got an offer from a buyer for $25, and I went ahead and I accepted that. So I paid $1.19 for this, and it sold after 16 days. I 100% would pick this up again. I knew when I saw it in the bin that it was 90s based off of the print, and then also I know that's something that a lot of people do look for, even though it was more on the faded side. But just because an item is faded and it's vintage doesn't necessarily mean that it won't sell for you. Some people don't care about that, and it can actually add value to the piece. But I sold these knowing that it was a potential that I would have to take an offer, and it looked like there was a tiny spot that could have even been a bleach spot, but it didn't matter. This person purchased it for me. I got a few offers from this one. One person in particular who was sending me like several lowball offers, and originally started out like offering me like $18, and then tried to like go up higher to like 20 and then 21, and then sent me a message even, and I sent that person like a $23 firm offer, but they weren't biting, and eventually this person swooped in and went ahead and purchased it. So that was pretty nice. I was happy with that, and I'm glad that they were able to see that there was some value in that. Next up, I sold this State and Liberty shirt, men's large, the Bellamy Business blue long sleeve stretch shirt, and this sold for me for $39.99. I bought this at the bins, and it was $1.19 that I had into it. It sold after 7 days. I 100% would pick this up again. 7 days is a wonderful amount of time to sell something like this in, and I didn't have very much into it. Whenever I saw it in the bins, all I saw at the time was just the embroidery that it was at the bottom. So it let me know that this was the brand, even though it was missing the inner label and the size. So I 100% would pick that up again. That was absolutely amazing, and the time period was great as well. Next up, I sold this, and it was a U.S. Navy deck jacket, men's 40 N4 blue utility military Vietnam USN vintage 60s jacket. This sold for me for $159.99, and I paid about $1.45 for this at the Goodwill bins, and it sold for me in 17 minutes. For this one, I originally did ask for more money, but I had a coupon that was going on in my store that I didn't exclude this one from, so the buyer actually did get like an additional $40 off from what I originally asked. But I'm still very happy with that $160 purchase, because I didn't have a lot into it and the buyer got what they wanted. I know a lot of military stuff can sell for good money, and this happened to be it. It was one of someone's throwbacks, and so I'm pretty glad that I was able to pick that up and sell it for decent money. 100% I would pick this up again. Altogether, my item sales for the month of February were $802.18, and my cost of goods for everything was $45.40. I am very happy with all of the sales that I had for the month of February, and I look forward to seeing what is going to be in my March sales, because typically this is around the time when people start getting their tax returns back, so that's always really good, especially as a clothing seller. But that's all that I have for you guys today, and thank you so much for sticking around, and let me know if you want down in the comments, would you have picked up any of these things. How are your sales going for the month of February? And I guess I will see you guys next time. Thank you so much for sticking around, and I'll see you. Bye.